Hey guys, this is Jon.
And Nicole.
And welcome back to our Family and an Aesthetic podcast. And boy, do we have a scandal for you.
I'm sure you've all heard the 22 patients in 11 states treated with counterfeit Botox.
Yes, it is quite the scandal right now, and we're going to fill you in on it. This is a very broad topic. Like, I don't even know where to start, Nicole. Where should we begin?
I know. It's unfortunately, it's not unheard of. Mm-hmm. This is just the most, I feel like, broadcasted version of it. We hear all the time of these people getting arrested at hotels or basements, injecting God knows what.
Yes. And like also we've heard for years people buying filler and neurotoxin on the black market. I mean, for years, right?
I'm sure. I get all the messages. I'm a supplier from South Korea. I can get you cheaper this, that.
Always. And they always, on Instagram too, they'll follow you like all the time. You get the follows. And then they'll comment on your pictures. I'll check your DM, stuff like that. And there's unfortunately some people that will fall into that whole scheme, which is unfortunate. But yes, those 22 patients, when we dive deeper into it, were treated by unlicensed people.
All non-medical personnel, yes. In non-medical settings. So
yes, and they're not getting their Botox from Allergan.
Correct. This is coming from, like we talked about, these like, similar to something like Alibaba or DHgate.
Yes.
These like black market.
Yeah, and the boxes are different.
Yes.
Like when you look at Botox Cosmetic from Allergan versus the box from the black market, it's totally different. And also like on the vial, this is why it's so important for you as a patient to ask, you can even ask your provider, like, can I see the vial? Or where do you get your Botox from? Those are good questions to ask. It's not a stupid question. It might sound like a stupid one, but it's not.
No, absolutely. And also even just checking your provider's credentials. Because at this last conference I went to, AmSpa, Julie Kaplan was explaining how they had an injector in their town who was injecting out of a medical office, but was not a medical provider. It went on for months and she had to deal with a lot of the complications, but it's terrifying. Like you can definitely, these are easy to find. Licenses are easy to look up and you can just search your provider's name and find them on whatever state they're in. You can find it on the board. But it's definitely, I know it's exciting and these are like very exciting things. You would just want to go in and get it done. Sometimes we have patients call, I want to come same day, but it's definitely, you have to do your research and you have to know who's injecting you. And you have to know you can trust them.
Yes.
And that's another thing too, is if they're saying they're using Botox, you should be able to find them on Allergan or Botox's Find a Provider.
Yes, which is so easy.
Yeah, if you're putting in their location and they're not popping up, that should be concerning.
Because you can go on your Ally. So Ally, right, which is like a loyalty program for anybody that houses Juvederm and Botox at their practice. Most of those practices have Ally, which is a loyalty program that you sign up for. It's free, but you can literally, like, say you move like out of state and you're trying to find a trusted provider, you can literally go into search provider, right? And just type in
your zip code, your new
zip code, and then that Botox provider will pop up, and that will be a trusted provider for you.
Yeah, and I think too, you mentioned, asking to see the vial. If you walk in somewhere and you feel like the vibes are not it, feel like the vibes are off, you have every right to ask for their credentials, to see the product, even fillers. We see this with fillers too. Fake fillers, they come in a very similar box, but they're getting them for much cheaper.
Yes.
And that's the other thing that we hear a lot of people getting these Instagram or like Groupon. If your Botox is under $10 or your filler is under $400, like, I'm sorry, a syringe does not go below $700, $750 nowadays.
I know.
It physically cannot for us with the overhead, but it's that should be a red flag to begin with.
100%.
Is a very low pricing.
Yeah. And then, you'll hear some people say, oh, half off your Botox treatment, or it's $6 a unit versus, and it's like, how are you charging $6 a unit?
Right.
I just don't understand it. It's not possible.
No, it's not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And these patients too that were treated, none of them died, which is wonderful.
Thank God.
So some people go, oh my God, 22 people were affected. They were hospitalized. It sounds terrible. But when you dive deeper into the research, none of them died. They were treated with the antidote, right? And then they were sent home and they were okay. But I think some people that say, and I've had a couple patients that were from overseas that maybe like were getting it done there or studied abroad or whatever. And then they came back to me and they were getting Botox or whatever neurotoxin they were getting there, come here. And then they were having like these, I don't know, like a little reactions to the Botox, like more swelling, more redness, more like tenderness. There's specifically one patient who was from Brazil, And she, every time I do her Botox now, she gets this, like, I would say pretty good swelling at each site, and it takes about a week or two to go away.
Wow.
So we have to, I tell her to take like Zyrtec, Claritin, or like an antihistamine or something like that. And it does help, or like Tylenol. But with that being said, sometimes even overseas neurotoxin is not from the right distributor. Right. So it's really important you go to the right provider. Yeah. Also, like Juvederm boxes, you can also tell what's fake and what's real. Like, have you seen like it's
some of the
it's totally different than what it is now.
Yeah.
But I feel like those counterfeit Juvederm boxes are what it used to look like. Am I right?
Yeah, it's like the old version.
It's the old version.
Yeah,
so it's really important. Like, show me the box. Like,
right.
And it's also a red flag when a provider doesn't tell you what filler you're getting.
Oh yes, I get that all the time. Patients that come in and I'm like, so what did you get treated with last time? I had it a year ago. I had 6 months ago. I said, okay, so what product did you have? Oh, I don't know. I think it's very important. And I tell every patient if they don't ask, this is what we're doing today. They get a whole write-up, a whole plan. They leave with the product names.
Yes.
And now, since this whole debacle, we actually started giving patients their own lot numbers.
Oh, really?
So, the fillers should come with stickers, and it gives you 4 of them. So we'll actually put the sticker on their plan, and that you have your lot number straight from Allergan.
Oh, that's really nice. Should I be doing that? God, Nicole. Just when you think you have it all. That's good.
Thanks.
Yes, you're welcome.
You got to stay ahead of the curve.
No, seriously. Oh my gosh. So I can't. So back to like trying to find like a good provider. Like, credentialing is like so important. Like you said, like it's important to like research, Google them, like, and also like ask like what's your NPI number or stuff like that. I mean, right?
So you can easily research them by. And two, I think social media is a great thing. We talked a little earlier on in a separate episode, but it can be a bad thing because it can scare patients, and sometimes you could share a little too much, but it can be a really good thing in that we can share before and afters. And as a patient, you can find pictures that align with what you're going for. So, if you see these natural results that you're looking for full face treatment and you're not looking to look crazy or look any different, you can kind of find a provider based off their before and after. So I think being able to create a portfolio on Instagram has been really helpful as well.
That's really true. That's
for patients to be able to search you and find you. I don't know if you saw on Instagram recently, somebody posted, I forget who it was. If I find it, we can throw it in here.
Yeah.
But it was like a mother and daughter. They were like arrested. I don't know if it was at their house or whatever.
I did see that.
But they were like injecting, I think it was like those cement butt injections, whatever it is. Or it might have been face, but
it was
whatever.
on the news.
Yes, it was on the news.
Yes.
And the woman coming out as they're arresting her, she had these like crazy cheeks and these lumpy lips. So it just goes back to making sure that you feel comfortable and you agree with how your provider looks. If I'm going to come to you because I want to look natural and you look natural.
What saddens me is that there's people that will go to these people. And I think that's why we're doing this episode on Filming End, is to fill you guys in on how it's so important to find. I know, like, we all want a deal. Like, we all want a good, deal on that. And the economy, it's not the best right now. It's, it's tough times. But it doesn't matter. Like, you
still, if you're going to get these procedures done, you don't cut corners with this.
You can't cut corners. It's your body. It's your health.
Yeah.
And
that's the other thing too. Patients don't realize, and I find it incredible when I consult with a new patient and they're unaware that, there are complications. There are adverse events that can happen, such as your skin dying. You could go blind. These are very rare.
Yes.
But there are things that can happen. And if your provider's not telling you these things, that should be a red flag too.
Yes.
Again, the chance of them happening is minuscule, but
right.
I know if I'm coming in somewhere with that potential, I would want to know it.
100%. And we go through so much, like back to like our previous episodes of where we got to where we are today. Like it's been so much work to get to where we are, and we have so much passion and we care so much for what we do. So like, go to someone like that is what I'm trying to say.
The authenticity. Yes. Knowing that your provider's actually going to care.
Yes.
That's the other thing too, is like, and no matter if you own a business or not, any injector will understand, like you inject a certain area of the face. Like every time I do a nose, I like don't sleep that night.
Oh my gosh.
Because you think about it, you know, like I'm always thinking about my patients and always concerned for them.
And you're waiting for a text or waiting for a call.
Right.
And that's the other thing too. Like we genuinely want to know if you're unhappy with something, if there's a problem. Like my biggest thing and almost pet peeve is like when you have a patient that's been with you for, you know, years or you just met them, and there was an issue, but they went to someone else.
Yeah.
And then you then see that on social media, then they post it, and it's just not right. And that puts a bad taste, also puts a negative connotation for the aesthetics community in general, right?
Yeah.
But like we want to know if there's like either I have a bruise, should I be concerned? Like I'm all about that.
Right.
You know?
And at the end of the day, it's your face. And if you're unhappy
100%.
with something, even if it's something that's not a negative issue, like it's not an adverse event, we still want to know about it because there's definitely things that we can do and treat.
And the patients aren't bugging us. Like this is like what we...
Right. This is our job.
Yes, this is our job. We are medical providers. Like when we work as a provider in the hospital, are you kidding me? It's like we want to know if they're going downhill, right? If there's nurses will call. It's a little bit different. Like this is an outpatient procedure.
Right.
So they're then leaving and it's like, bye.
Yeah.
I hope you're happy. You know, of course we want to follow up with you.
Of course. Yeah. I think too, like making sure that your provider has everything on hand. God forbid something goes wrong.
Thank God you sent me that list. Crash cart. Little crash cart you sent me.
Yes. Our little aesthetics crash cart.
Yes.
It's so important because I think of all these places that, you know, these patients can potentially end up at. And if you do, again, extremely rare, but if you do end up with an issue, does your provider have what you're going to need to treat it? If you have a vascular occlusion, which is when blood flow is blocked by the filler, you need Hyaluronic, and you may need 20 vials of it. I mean, we keep at least 24 to 30 vials of Hyaluronic on hand at all times. And again, going back to community over competition, we know our neighbors.
We do.
If we need more Hyaluronic, we can reach out to them. So it's very important in things like ultrasound. And besides that, having medications that'll increase your blood flow and
100%.
An EpiPen. You never know what someone could be allergic to.
Yes.
And God forbid they go into anaphylaxis.
Yes.
You got to have those EpiPens. Yeah. And so I think it's really important. And that's, again, as a patient, you have every right to ask, do you have this kind of stuff?
You 100% do. And I think it's just important for people to know, like, I feel like years ago, if someone got a vascular occlusion, we will never go to that provider. We are not God.
Nope.
We're human.
Yep.
Okay. But also, like, it can happen.
It can happen to anyone.
It can. But I think what makes someone a good provider is how do you treat?
Exactly.
Can they treat it? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
are you there for the patient? A lot of the times, if a patient reaches out, if a patient reaches out with a bruise, we don't just let it go. Like, we want pictures. We want to see you in person. Sometimes practices will be like, oh, it's a bruise.
Yes, because sometimes a bruise looks questionable.
Right.
It just does.
Yep. You'd rather see it in person.
And I always tell, like, especially in like trainings, I always tell them, I'm like, if you're not nervous, it's a problem. Like, even though like I've been doing it for 5 years, you've been doing it for 7.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there's days I'm like not nervous to do things, but like just that like meticulousness, like about doing, you know, an anterior medial cheek injection or, you know, something like that. Like even afterwards, I'm always like checking capillary refill, making sure everything's good. And if you're not nervous just a little bit, it's a problem. And that's honestly when something bad happens, is when you're just not nervous at all. So,
or rushing too. And we kind of touched on that in the last
my
episode
God.
too about
rushing.
Yeah,
let's do a full face of filler in a half hour.
Literally.
No, you can't do that.
And that too was part of why the two of us stemmed out on our own, because we wanted to be able to give patients the time that is actually necessary, because it's not safe to be doing these things in a half hour. You know, a full face takes an hour.
It does.
And certain areas are quicker than others, but it's not a procedure to be rushed. This is not a lunchtime.
No.
Can't stand the lunchtime, no downtime advertisements I see. That's not what this is. I think at the end of the day, we've gotten so far from treating this as a medical procedure, and we need to kind of bring that back.
Yes.
I see a lot of Botox.
Sterility.
Yes, sterility. Yes. Yep.
Huge.
Yep. But I see a lot of these, you know, Botox parties, and there's nothing wrong with a good Botox party, but in the right setting.
Yes.
You know, like you see blowouts and Botox. Like, this is not a makeup procedure. This is a medical procedure. It's a medication that is dosed to you as a patient.
Right.
and it should be treated as such. And it no longer is. And I think that's the issue that we've come across. And I feel like that's the main reason why I wanted to be a trainer and open my own place, is to bring that education back.
And I think too, another like red flag for patients too, when you're, searching for a practice and say you make an appointment, you go there, if they don't have you fill out a medical history form, like that's huge.
Yeah. If they're not asking any questions. Yeah.
Anybody who comes to mine or Nicole's practice, they fill out a medical history form, and then we get to see what medications you're on. If there's anything that's contraindicated, I can't tell you the amount of times right before doing facial fillers, they said, I'm like, are you on any blood thinners? No. And then you just get talking with them, and then you talk about their medical history. Oh, well, I had a stroke, or I had this. I'm like, oh, like, are you on Plavix? Are you on like Xarelto? Yes, I'm on Xarelto. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was about to, poke you all over, So I'm like, okay, wait, what do you want it for? Call your cardiologist, make sure you get approval, especially if you have a, history of like reinstant, like anything.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, all these things are serious.
Yes, exactly. It's a serious thing. It's fun, and we love to do it, and it's art, and it is a great time, but it still needs to be taken seriously.
Yes.
And I feel like from the patient's point of view, social media has taken away some of that, importance. And
if you're going to someone that's charging $6 a unit, that would be a red flag.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And this is what we're trying to say is like, for the instances of botulism that happened with those 22 patients, they were unlicensed personnel. They were most likely not getting a medical history. They don't have the background to justify them doing what they were doing.
And they were in non-medical settings. So someone's house, a hotel.
Yes. It wasn't sterile. It wasn't,
Yeah, and that's a huge thing too, is sterility, keeping the area clean.
Yes. We were just talking about our cleaning lady.
Yes. Oh my God, we were.
Yes.
The importance of a very clean atmosphere.
Yes, 100%.
They're extremely important.
I can't work. First off, I mean, ew.
Yeah.
But like, I can't work in clutter.
Oh no. No, we would die without our cleaning guy.
Yes. Yeah. I collaborate with a couple salons and do Botox events, but like I literally like staple my business card with my brochures and give them to each of them, and most of them are my patients.
Right.
Or they just like to go to these events because there's like vendors and stuff like that.
Right.
But like we do like medical history forms and all that there.
Exactly. There's a time and a place and a right way to do it. Yeah.
So
a lot of time you hear about these Botox parties that are in so-and-so's living room.
I know.
And the injector goes and there's no follow-up. There's no way to contact them. You don't even know who they were. You don't know what you got.
It's yes, I think it's interesting because I know for me, when I first started out, I did a few Botox events, a couple of them, scandal, but they were in a home. But they all filled out medical history forms.
I've injected in a tanning salon waiting room, so don't even worry.
No, it's but like I feel like, especially like getting your name out there.
Yeah.
Like when I was at the previous office I worked at before I opened up Tox Pout, I was just like, you're like, oh, you're depressed. You're like, when's my schedule going to fill up? I made sure, obviously, I was on social media. I was making my presence known, which I think is huge. You can't just rely on your practice for giving you patients. Like you have to put forth the effort, right?
You have to go out and
you do.
Salons are honestly the best way to do it.
They are the best, right? Because, my God, you want to be friends with
all this
hairstylists.
Driving in here?
Yeah. Oh.
You have like 100 salons.
A million. There's one right across the street.
Yeah, there's so many.
And I love that owner so much.
Lash artists too. I get a lot of patients from lash artists.
Yes. And, but I think it's such a good way though, starting out. And I think this comes back to our last podcast episode a little bit, is to get your name out there, doing some of these events. It's great. But I think what we're trying to say is make sure you have consent forms.
Right. Make sure you're doing it the right way.
Yeah. Make sure you're doing it the right way. And if you're doing it the right way, that's great.
Yep.
Yeah. And just make sure that you book their 2-week follow-up if they're a new patient. I think it's so important.
Oh, yeah.
New patients. And even some of your existing patients to book 2-week follow-ups, but definitely first-time patients, 2-week follow-ups are important.
I recently even had a patient. We didn't do really so much 2-week follow-ups. It's just that our book is really busy and it's hard to squeeze them in.
Yes.
And my patient, she's been a patient of mine for years, and she brought a friend. So she was a new patient. I'm like, listen, we're going to have to see you in 2 weeks. So she just came with her, and we did her pictures too. And we've been treating her DAOs, which are your muscles that, it's a beautiful face.
Oh, it's weird.
Make you frown.
Yes.
And we treated them a couple of times. And because we took her pictures this time and showed her side by side, she was like, oh my gosh. Like this whole time, she's like, I thought that was my ice rolling and my gua sha. Like, and now because the patient gets to see it side by side, you realize like, oh my God, the Botox really does. But sometimes it's such a subtle change. Again, subtle but impactful.
Yes.
But that it's not so noticeable to them. So I think the 2-week follow-ups are important as well.
It is. And just something to add on to that, the best injectable is undetectable, right? It's so true.
Amen.
Yeah. Like you want to see a difference, but you don't want other. Amen.
Snaps.
Snaps.
You know what that reminded me of, Nicole?
Oh my God, what did I say?
Don't sleep on or whatever.
Never hurt. I said a good customized facial never hurt anybody.
Customized facial never hurt nobody.
And I literally told Brittany, don't ever film me again.
Oh my God. Oh man. Yeah. So we should probably talk about like what are like the normal symptoms of Botox that people have that are normal, normal side effects. And then we can also talk about what some of these symptoms that these patients that were affected with botulism were experiencing.
Yes. Yeah. So I think definitely your normal Botox headache is expected.
Yes.
And I explain it like it's like muscle fatigue. Like you've been in the sun like you've been at the beach and you forgot your sunglasses all day. And it just feels like a headache right over your eyes.
Yeah, or like a sinusy, pressurey, sometimes people say. And this goes for all neurotoxins.
Yes, not just Botox, yes.
Sometimes like people have a little bit like of an allergy, like sinus, like sometimes like a tickle in their throat or something I've heard like with some, but it's nothing crazy. You can take a Claritin or Zyrtec and be fine.
And then the little bumps, obviously you leave looking like you got, oh my God, I can't talk.
Yes.
You leave looking like you got attacked by mosquitoes.
Like bee stings, And all that is like when you first leave, everybody looks in the mirror and they're like, oh my God, I have to go to Wegmans or I have to go to Target after this. I'm like 100% fine. It's just the fluid those little bumps are the fluid the Botox is in, and then it absorbs within the muscle within 20, 30 minutes?
Exactly. By the time you drive anywhere, you're good.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it's injection site swelling as well.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, a little bit of redness, maybe.
I've had a couple patients, and I'm sure you've had the same thing, where sometimes like it's like a small residual little elevation of the skin, maybe 2 to 3 days later, but that's very, I think, rare.
Yeah. 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 And these poor patients that we were just talking about before, the 22 patients, I think a lot of it was like body weakness, difficulty swallowing, dizziness, blurry vision,
nausea, vomiting.
Yeah, so like full
more systemic.
Botulism. Yes.
More systemic.
Yeah.
Symptoms.
Yeah, and I think when it comes down to it, is they were injected with something that wasn't, I don't want to say purified, but it didn't have the added proteins and the necessary additives to not go systemic and not cause an issue, and
which caused the body to have those reactions.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And when we talk about, worrying about our patients, like we worry about all of our patients. I spoke about the nose earlier. We have so many tiny arteries through there. So when we fill a nose with filler, it's obviously a very high risk area. So we do very small amounts. I don't think you even do nose filler, right?
I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer, and you do it way more than me. And I used to do it, but I don't do it anymore because I feel like if you're confident or if you're doing a treatment, you should be doing it frequently. Yes. Right. Yeah. And I wasn't doing nose or liquid rhinoplasties frequently. If I was doing it more frequently, I would be more confident with it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. But we do very small amounts. We never do more than like a half syringe in a sitting. And I have the patient come back 2 weeks later to do a little bit more to keep them safer.
Sure.
We're always going to keep it midline. And there's all these, we aspirate and all these things to protect the patient. But
of course, bruising's normal.
Bruising's normal. Yes.
Which is always nerve-wracking as well.
But it's just one of those things, you do as much as you can to protect the patient, but you're still going to think about it because, we care.
Yes, 100%. And it just comes down to, if you're going to someone who does liquid rhinoplasties, do they know how to handle
an issue?
Yes. Right? And if they do, that's where you want to go to.
Yes. And do they have, that's actually a great point. Do they have someone they can refer you to?
100%.
If it comes to a point where if it's an issue with vision or something like that, we can't handle that so much. We need an ophthalmologist. Or if it's an issue with skin, if you have an occlusion where you have some necrosis or issues of that, like do you have a hyperbaric chamber you can refer your patient to? Do you have the right wound care? Again, this is not to scare anyone. These are very, very rare issues, but it's just when we hear about these things where these poor patients were affected.
No one likes to talk about this stuff. Right? And we're talking about it, and it's like, oh my God, it's negative. It's not negative. It's just giving you education.
Right.
And there's things that we can do. And honestly, in my eyes, like in most really good skilled injectors who care, right, most vascular occlusions are caught pretty immediately.
Yes.
And are corrected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the major thing is early correction is key in those.
Yeah.
And I think something we just brought on recently was an ultrasound, which we're learning so much more about in this industry.
Amazing.
Ultrasound is going to keep a lot of patients much safer. Ultrasound is going to allow your provider to see vessels, and God forbid there is a block, we'll be able to see where that block is happening. And we'll be able to see where the filler is,
it's also
inject right into it.
With dissolving too. God forbid you have to dissolve. Like, did we get it all? Is it still there?
Yes, someone that comes in with migrated filler. It's not just for those complications. It's for those patients with, that really bad under eye filler or migrated lip filler, where you can really target the filler that time.
And side note, like we said, a normal side effect of getting Botox or Dysport, Jubel, whatever, is a little bit of a headache sometimes. People come to us sometimes to treat their headaches with Botox.
Yes, yeah.
Which is another whole topic, like tension headaches and things like that.
Yep.
Which is kind of funny. Some people come and they'll be like, I know my Botox is wearing off because my headaches are coming back.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, snap, snap.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I can take care of that.
Yes. So Nicole, fill me in on your...
I can't wait to hear this question.
Sorry. Fill me in on some advice that you would give the consumer, like the patient. Like, just a summary.
Yeah. I would say definitely don't just go on Google and
yes,
eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Definitely look at reviews. I think reviews are huge. It's hard sometimes because some places will give an incentive for a review, so you can't always trust that. But I think looking at the reviews, and if they truly have a lot to say, it's a good thing.
Yes.
Just a bunch of 5 stars with nothing to say is probably not the best thing to look at. And then social media. I think finding them on Instagram and making sure that their before and afters truly align with your version of beauty.
Yeah.
That's a lot. We say that a lot at Exhibit, like make sure that we're hearing you, like we're listening to the patient. We want to know what you think is beautiful because everyone's version of beauty is something different.
And to your point, like before and afters can be very deceiving.
Yes.
Are they getting the right angle?
Right.
Are they? And I'm very honest. Like if I'm posting a before and after and I know it's not a good angle, I'll be like, I'm sorry, this wasn't the best angle, but if you saw it in person.
Right. Or they do a jawline and the first one's like this and the second one's like.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's tough.
Yeah. But like also like, for instance, like the cement butt thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
like that mother-daughter combo, whatever. Like just, there's certain people that they'll post a before and after, right? And we can tell what's real. We do these treatments day in and day out. So I can look and be like, that's either realistic, that's real, or it's not.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, and other people that are in it, they don't know.
Yeah. And it is hard sometimes to explain to patients that this is not doable.
Especially like
that can happen.
Especially like Sculptra BBL results, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I see cellulite disappear way too dramatically, and I'm like, question mark.
Face tune.
I know. You just wonder.
Yeah, yeah. But definitely before and afters, making sure that they align with what your version of beautiful is and what you want done.
100%.
And then credentials, like it should be listed on their website. It should be listed on their Instagram. I would definitely
meet the team, read their bios.
Exactly, read their bios. And I think definitely making sure that whoever you're going to also is always continuing their education. Like you mentioned earlier, it's always changing. If we're not on top of it, we're going to fall behind, and you need to be up to date. That's the most important thing. So
I could not agree more. Love it. Well, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in on this episode of Fill Me In, the Aesthetics Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Injector Jon and
Aesthetic Nurse Nicole.
If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications.
And as always, leave any questions or comments below, and we will fill you in next time.
Love you guys.
Leave them below, and we will... What did we say?
Fill you in!
Fill you in next time? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Damn it! That was so good too. Damn it!
Oh my god, that's good.
I should have just said it because that's what I was. Yeah. Where did I leave off of? And we'll fill you in next time.
Love you guys.
Why'd I give a thumbs up?
I did it. I did it too. I was like,
did this tiny little, and we'll fill you in next time. Should I redo it?
I don't know. Oh, he was like, yeah.